Okay, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of This is Learning. Our guest has disappeared yet again, but he is the great Shai. The great Shai Reznik
Hello.
is back. Hello,
Just want
Shai. How are you?
to. I'm good. How are you guys?
Great, great. Santosh, how's Germany?
It's not treating me well. I've been struggling a lot, but yeah, let's see. Uh, People are supportive. Let's see.
Good, good. Well,
When did you move?
January. It's been 3 months now.
Oh, so you know the language already?
No, I don't.
I'm sure German is a little bit different than the language that you grew up with.
A
Little
lot.
bit.
Of course. I speak English, and the good thing is a lot of people speak English. That's a good thing.
Nice. That's good. Well, I know 0 other languages other than English, so you're already a step ahead of me. Okay, so we're here to talk about testing with Shai, I believe, and the ObserverSpy library for testing observables. Santosh, have you ever used ObserverSpy before?
But I'm really bad at writing tests. So
Yeah, see, I
Shame on you.
to write tests,
Shame on you.
everyone has their their negative points, Shy. It's okay.
That's
It
okay.
just
That's
happens
okay.
that testing is a lot of people's weak points.
I know that's where that's what's getting me excited about it because when I started, I was like, yeah, testing is the standard, right? And then I met a lot of people who are really, really struggling with it, and that reminded me how I struggled when I first started. So that like made me think, okay, there is a good size market for people who are struggling with it, and I think I can take up on the challenge of trying to make testing fun and easier by creating tools, by creating courses, by doing all that stuff. And that's a long journey. It's a hard task, but it's a fun one. I'm enjoying it and I'm passionate about it. So yeah.
So, what was the solution that you created ObserverSpy for? What problem were you trying to solve?
Okay. So
Well, hold on. We should probably say what ObserverSpy is first, I guess. What is ObserverSpy, and then what problem are you solving, just so people aren't completely lost.
yeah, we started like right from the get-go. Hi, I'm Shai. Nice to meet you. I have a green screen. So it actually ties into the whole like library story and what it does and such. So like I said, I've been passionate about testing and trying to help others test their code in a much more cost-effective way. And I've been teaching about Angular and about testing for a long time. And a few years ago, I was on the camp, like I for a long time was on the camp of like promises and really using RxJS as very like in minimal usage. Because I didn't think RxJS should be used for everything because it brings a lot of complexity to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a long time, I was like, I had this like a library called AutoSpies, which let me like emit values from observables in my tests. But then when I moved to when I moved to a more reactive state management solution at one of my consulting clients, I saw the need for, okay, now we have much more complexity. Again, that's why I wanted to avoid it. But with all this complexity, that the job of the test is to make the code better and simpler and such. And I looked on how can I test marbles RxJS, and I got to marble testing, and I was like, at the same time, I was getting a lot of demand for creating a course about observable testing. So I thought, okay, let me use the knowledge that I'm like, or the experience that I'm gathering in my consulting job, and maybe like try to teach that. So I really tried. I really tried like going to the marble testing route, and it was impossible for me, at least, to read the testing code, because to anyone who doesn't or not familiar with marble testing, it's like this cryptic language where you need to create your marble diagram of like the values that emitted, and then you need to translate those into the actual values, and when is a subscription, you need to know about hot and cold observables and all that stuff.
And it's ASCII art. You're testing via ASCII art.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I actually said, I'm not quitting so easily, right? I'm like, experienced enough to know that when it's hard at the beginning, but then it gets better, right? Like every technology. So I tried and looked for the documentation. And first of all, I found like 4 different libraries. And then I looked at, the Angular are suggesting the Jasmine marbles. The ArcGIS has the ArcGIS marbles. You have like lots of implementations. And the official recommended thing from Angular, the Angular docs, was Jasmine marbles, which was created by the NGRX team. And they had no documentation for it. So I was looking online on blogs, how to write marble testing. And it was like, it took me a while to figure out that it's a different library syntax. So that's why it doesn't work. But the Jasmine marble didn't have documentation. So I dug into the source code and tried to understand it. And when I read the source code of marble testing, then I realized, now, okay, I need to add this method and like write it this way. Okay. But then I started to create my course, and I was like, how the hell am I going to teach this stuff to other people? I can barely like understand it and use it and read it. And I'm experienced in testing. Like it's not new to me. And also in ArcGIS, like, for a couple of years. So I said, like, it doesn't have to be this, complicated. So I just searched for other solutions, and there were nothing on JavaScript land. So I did what I usually do, is to look at other languages. And I read, I thought, okay, who else uses RX? We have .NET, we have Java. So I looked at like Java books and .NET books. And I ran into this book called, I think, RX Java. It's linked in the GitHub README page, that had a section about, I think it was ObserverSpy or something like that. And I looked at their code, and it was like, they're just using the observer just as the spy itself. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's very simple. That's much simpler than like setting all this code, reading the source code, trying to understand all that stuff, trying to learn ancient Egyptian
hieroglyphs.
To understand how to write a simple observable test. All I want to do is just to subscribe, right?
Yeah.
And so I took inspiration from this idea and created like the first version of the ObserverSpy, which was very quick because it's a very simple library. It started as a very simple library. And once I created it, I thought it couldn't be that simple. This feeling of, you come up with the solution that it's like, it cannot be this simple, or else, someone else already like have created it, right? Especially the smart people, out there who are more experienced than me with RX, and and I was like, okay, let's publish it. And once I publish it, other good people join the core team. I feel like like I'm working on Angular or something like that. We have a core team, and contributed like ideas and actual code, and we made it much simpler. And the version you see today is, I think, the it doesn't require a lot of changes, and you can use it with ease. And another thing important thing that people miss when they use ObserverSpy is that once I started actually using it, I said like, oh, now we can replace marble testing, but it wasn't really true or easy, because you still needed a way to simulate observables which emitting multiple values, maybe with a delay, and stuff and such. So I added more functionality to my other library, AutoSpies, which lets you emit, it's called next with values, the method there, and it lets you emit multiple values from your dependencies observable returning method. Okay, so let's say we have a component which depends on a service, and the service has a method which returns an observable. You can use AutoSpies to automatically create a spy for this service, and also configure its method to return an observable with your values. And you can also configure it to return multiple values, depending on on which delay do you want. If you want with no delay, with a delay, on an error, or complete, whatever you like, whatever you can do with marble testing. So the combination of AutoSpies and ObserverSpies together, form Voltron, the mega testing RxJS robot that lets you, and it's really, really easy. Like, they're easy methods to configure and to use in your test. So that's the story behind ObserverSpy. And yeah, so once I started teaching about it, and people were like, oh, mind blown. Okay, now I can replace all of my marble testing with these simpler things. And yeah, so I created more courses on, like, okay, how to take these principles and apply it to NGRX, for example, how to test effects using this way and this method, which simplify your effect test in tenfold. So that's that's the story.
Sweet. Well, that segues really well into my next question, which is, are there any cases where ObserverSpy doesn't work and you need to fall back to marble testing, or have you covered all of those cases now by adding on to the functionality?
So to tell you the truth, I've been asking the same question for like 2 years now. Anyone who I talk with about ObserverSpy or marble testing, and at the start, I also, before creating it, I sent to my clients and my students, and everyone I work with who had like trouble with marble testing, to send me their most complicated RxJS code. I want to see how they try to test it with marble testing. And I really wanted to find a use case where I can say, hey, for this use case, marble testing is the answer. And the only use case that came to mind, and this answer comes from the RxJS core team as well, is testing RxJS operators, and which was the original, reason for creating marble testing. It was for, testing RxJS, the internal stuff. And because if you think about it, marble testing, a disadvantage other than the cryptic language is that it tests implementation details, meaning you actually need to specify the amount of frames that are passing from, like, in each value, after each value, or like ticks or time frame. And that if you miss one, now you start fighting with your test to, did I add a dash? Did I, when should it start? Like, you start like trying to synchronize, and it's just like wasted work, because nobody cares. Nobody cares how many frames, are passing, unless you have a very unique, specific case where you have like very complicated merges where you need this value and this, this specific time. and then it might make sense. But then again, you can simulate the same thing with the combination of AutoSpies and ObserverSpies with like the delay value. You can add a delay, and if you're using fake async, it's virtual time, so you don't pay the cost of like actually waiting that time. So if you think about how to simplify your observable tests, think about, okay, what do I want to achieve here? I want to, emit something, or like set up my code, subscribe to my observable, and then asserting or verifying the result, right? And I don't really care how many frames or went between the values. I just care that if a certain amount passed, like let's say 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 500 milliseconds, I don't know, then I want to check the result, and I want to see that the outcome is the same outcome. This is like black box testing or something like that. When you test the specific stuff in between, that's like testing the implementation details. So and it messes up your tests. Your tests become more brittle. So that's the answer that I can give you now. But I really like anyone who listens to this podcast, and I know a lot of smart people are like following you, and you have a lot. You guys are smart, and you have a lot of smart people in your team. I really want to get use cases where the combination of AutoSpies and ObserverSpies doesn't hold, right? And I want to see if I can make it better. So yeah,
we have not come across it yet, at my team anyway. I can't say we have very many, super complex streams. I wouldn't say like we're not doing, multiple operators and chaining inside of, switch maps and all that kind of stuff, right? Thankfully. But
which you shouldn't, shouldn't anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen some pretty wicked effects shared on Twitter in the past, like hundreds of times.
If you don't want to go to sleep right away, you should watch those and stay awake for 2 more hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point though, Shai. Like, you don't want to be like, you shouldn't necessarily care about the number of ticks or frames it takes, but more that, well, did it emit this one and then this one and then this one? Yes. Okay. Well, then it's correct, right? Not, well, it took 2 milliseconds and then it took 3 milliseconds and then it took 1 millisecond, right?
Yeah. Who cares? Who the hell cares?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is more of a question from me because I read the docs in preparation for this interview again, and I think I might be doing something wrong with the ObserverSpy library. I was like writing up questions and thought, maybe this doesn't work the way that I've been using it. Does because so everybody that writes RxJS knows that hanging subscriptions, will create memory leaks, and they just kind of don't get cleaned up, right? So you, in your ObserverSpy library, you have the ability to set up auto unsubscribe so that, observables are always cleaned up and they're not like hanging and stuff like that. But it looks like it's configured differently for Jasmine and Karma versus Jest. Does the auto unsubscribe function that you import and then call in your test.ts file not work in Jest? Do you need to use the setup files after env?
So I'm guessing you didn't use the the configuration for Jest.
No, I think I'm using the auto unsubscribe function and calling it in the test TypeScript file.
But are you using Jest?
Yeah.
So why do you have a test?
There's a test setup file. We're using an
NX. If you're using it in a test setup, it should be fine.
Okay.
That's a good question. Okay. So no, because if I remember correctly, let's see.
Is the standard for Jest to not have a test setup file? Is that why your docs differentiate between Karma and Jest in that respect?
Yeah, because Karma, first of all, the first version, no, actually, it was, yeah, I think Observers AutoSpy was created first for Jasmine, and then we added the Jest version, and wait, let me see. Okay, so using, where is Jest? Jest. Here it is. Yeah, so in Karma, you have the test.ts file, which is the setup file for your test environment, and that gives you like a good place to like call this method, because what this method actually does behind the scenes is just like creating an after each method, just like on the root level, and then whenever you subscribe using ObserverSpy2, only this function. If you're just manually creating an ObserverSpy, it doesn't work. You need to manually add it to the queue, but it actually push it to an array, which auto unsubscribe in the after each will unsubscribe from this array automatically for you. So that's the trick, that does that. So in Karma and Jasmine, you have the test.ts. If you put it in the setup, I think in the Angular version of like Jest, you have like the setup, Jest file. I think it should be good. Okay. But I will need to test it, and see if there are anything wrong. We just wrote a generic way to do it, because you might have people using React with ArcGIS and they don't have like this setup like we have in Angular, right? So you might be doing it correctly, but I never like checked it, so I don't want to like give you like a for sure.
Okay, sounds good. I just wanted to double check because I was reading the docs. I was like, oh no, have we been writing all of our tests wrong?
You probably did, and you need to format your hard drive now. So let's wait while you do it. You C drive.
Yeah. I'm on a Mac, so I don't have a C drive, but
so just throw it on the after from the window.
Okay. Getting back to testing and not mistakes that I have apparently possibly made. What's the most common mistake you've seen with testing observables in the past, like with or without, observables spy?
That's a good question. I think that first of all, it like for simple use cases, people are sometimes overcomplicating stuff. Okay, sometimes they add like multiple operators and stuff like that. Just like to array or something like that. That again, that could be solved with using just an ObserverSpy instead of like trying to manually do it. For more complicated like effects, I saw that people are sometimes reuse or like rewrite the same testing logic over and over and over again, which is a hard problem, because if you think about it, a complicated observable with lots of links in the chain is like let's say a method which is divided into several private methods, which each does like its own thing. So that's a general testing problem. Do you test like just this method, and do you test like the private method? People are asking this question a lot. And if you're experienced with testing, you know that you should minimize your testing just to the public API and not like the private API. But then you still like left with the problem of like how can I like make my tests more focused on the specific thing they need to test, because you have operators which can manipulate the outcome. It's like a lot of if statements, for each operator. So I came up with this methodology called testing per link in the chain. So I actually show in the course how do I divide each test to test just one specific thing in the observable chain, and keep it the rest of the things to the minimum, so you can make changes, and that way you have a specific test that tests a specific thing without complicating the whole observable chain. So observables are hard that way. The more you complicate them, the harder it is to test them. So again, trying to find better and easier way to approach them. That's so a mistake that I see there is people trying to write gazillion lines of code tests, which try to test all the possible scenarios in each test, trying to set up all of the necessary data or setup code for each specific test, which sometimes you don't really need all the setup code. For example, let's say you have an observable which emits you needed to emit two values, okay? And you just want to see that the switch map works, okay? It actually canceled the last one and subscribing to the next one. Sometimes you don't care about these values. If you're not testing the manipulation or the mapping, or we just tested the switch is happening, and you end up having less values than you thought you would have if you were using something like a merge map or something like that, then you don't really care about. Again, it's like the less you care, the better you are at testing. That's a catchphrase. I should change my catchphrase from test right, sleep tight to this. So you can just emit empty values and just test the thing that you want to test. Think about what is under test now and minimize all the rest of the noise just for your test. So that's another mistake that I see.
Okay, cool. Well, we're coming up on the end of time. Is there anything you wanted to add about testing ArcGIS, ObserverSpy? You want to trash talk Jasmine Marbles and Jasmine Marbles a little bit more?
Did I trash talk them?
No.
Specific. Only the lack of the documentation.
Yeah. That can be said for a lot of open source projects, though. So.
Yeah, and again, we don't have documentation. Everything is in the README, but I try to document all the possible things there.
Really?
But yeah, I'm not. I'm thinking that if you see also talks from the ArcGIS team and the NGRX team who created the Jasmine Marbles, they also say don't use them. Okay, try not to use them.
Yeah.
Okay, because again, that's the normal evolution of libraries. You always have and so it's not about trash talking. It's about okay, let's find something better or quicker or faster, and in the future, someone might find an even easier way to do stuff rather than my libraries, right? So that's good. That's the evolution of code. I will say that I mentioned the courses that I have and all that stuff. I currently have a free masterclass where I talk about other tips for Angular, testing your Angular applications, which is at highres.io. But I will probably soon we're changing things up, so I might take this workshop off. Currently, in the end of the workshop, you can get a discount for getting all of the courses with the observable testing and all the stuff that we talked about. But we're switching gears, and we might change the pricing model and raise the prices or split things up. So this is currently the best deal that we have, and it's kind of a no-brainer. So if you want to take advantage of it before you change it, check it out. Check this masterclass before we like replace the website with the new pricing and the new website and details and such. So that's another shameless plug. Thanks, Alain. Oh, we have oh, it's actually, I don't see like the chat. Where can I see the chat? Oh, comments. Woo! We have lots of people. Nice. Alain is a good long time friend and client and student and
Nice.
Shai, where did you learn the storytelling? It's amazing and unique way of teaching. Thanks, Umar. The storytelling. So can you be more specific about do you, based on this episode or based on a specific course or lecture? If you be more specific, but I try to answer more in general. So a few years ago, I learned that the faster way to learn or to teach and to learn is to connect new stuff to old stuff, right? So that's why metaphors and parables and stuff like that work, because you already have this memory in your head about how I don't know, the hiring process at startup companies work, and if you connect it to RxJS, now you linked the two, and you have a better mental model to think about how stuff works. So that's why I always try. And a second thing I learned is the weirder the story or the thing, the better you will retain this memory for long term. So that's why I try to make stuff relatable to stuff that people already know, but to make it a little bit weird and funny and entertaining, so people will remember them for the long term. And because you always learn something, you watch this video or a course and you remember it for the next couple of minutes, but then you go to your code and try to implement, and okay, you're stuck. What am I supposed to do now? So if you have a weird story in your head, oh right, that bunny, okay, push the grandma down the stairs. Okay, now I understand how to test my spies. I don't know, my components.
Well, you do a good job of it for sure.
Thanks. Yeah. I try.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to shout out before we end the episode? Do you want to, call out something awesome you've done or other libraries? You've already mentioned a couple of them, and I've shared them in the chat. Your course. What else do you do? Superman?
I have, so in terms of open source, I have for people who are using this, I have another library which I'm going to use more and more now, and going to teach about that as the standard way of writing unit test. Okay, I'm trying to steer away from the old terms of unit and integration and end-to-end. This is the old way of thinking about testing, because they're general and they're they're confusing sometimes because they mean different things to different people, and it's hard to agree on what is a unit test. Do you isolate everything, or just partially, or just just take these couple of classes and this is the unit, or that's what I encountered. So I started talking about other terms single action test versus multi-action test, or isolated versus integrated. Start to coin new terms like laser test and flashlight test and cool names like this, which I talk about in the workshop that in the masterclass that you linked in Hi-Rez, and I explain them. But part of those, one aspect is the action scope, which is single versus multi-action in your test, and that's why what I call unit tests are single action tests, which are isolated. This is, for me, are unit tests, and you have single action tests which are integrated, which are more like your micro front end type of, testing your libraries there type of style. So those are called flashlight tests. But so to deal with, the like to restrict people from turning a single action test to a multi-action test, I created a library called Single, or just Jasmine Single, or just Single, which allows you to have the give and when then syntax for your test, and actually prevent you with nice error messages from creating more actions in your test. So you cannot test the thing or like run an action and then expect something and then run another action and then expect thing, because the minute you do that, you are complicating your test and you make them more brittle. So no, that's not given. That's the old.
That's
the old way. That's
Ignore
the old way of writing that. You have a better, like a newer version of it, which are now started to teach about.
Oops.
It's called Single.
Is
For
it in your
single
GitHub?
action. You want a link?
Yeah, I'm looking in your GitHub and I don't see it under yours.
It's on under Hi-Rez.
Okay.
So it's like the 6th one, but I will put it in the private chat, and you can put it in the public one.
There we go.
Okay, so it's easy. Instead of given, it's single. Anyway, so this is another cool library that people are now starting to discover and to use, which I hope that we can make it a standard for single action test and not like settle on the old. Again, the syntax for describe and it is like from, I don't know, 2004 or something like that. It's really old, and it's time to move on and to 2005. Okay, and Jasmine, which was created in 2009, was inspired by that syntax from Ruby, and we stuck with this syntax. Okay, so for simple like one-liners, the it maybe is sufficient, but most of the time our tests are more complicated than that, and you want like your messages, and it's awkward to put it in it should do only in this case, or all that stuff. So if you divide it into given when then, it's much easier to read and to follow, and you get like better log messages because you see like the structure of given when then and such. So that's that's another open source that I wasn't planning on talking about, but check it out.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
Appreciate you coming on the show. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully everybody else did in the chat. It seems like there's a lot of good information here and a lot of good libraries for people to look at to help improve their testing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, Jay Santosh. I'm going to open my own podcast soon called Test Effective for test effective development. So by the time people will listen to it in the future, like a couple of months from now, check it out as well. Perfect. But thank you for having me. It's good to see you, not as an avatar, but in real in real virtual life. And hopefully I will see you in person in NGConf or one of the other events that we'll have.
Totally. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,